Hello, Earth Science teachers. So in today's lesson, day 8 of the astronomy unit, the independent work was focused around doing some research on looking into the benefits and the challenges of space mining, and then having students do some research and come up with a claim as to whether or not we should be spending the resources to fund mining in space. So I did make a Google Doc that I did go over in a student-facing video on ways that students can collect information in this graphic organizer before presenting their claim and backing it up with evidence. Below on the second page, I've listed a couple of resources, but in this video for teachers, I just wanted to go over a couple different modifications that you can make either to this document or to the process as a whole. So I made this presentation for us teachers. So this is designing a debate around space mining. Again, I'm not an expert in this, but these are just some ideas that came to my mind when looking at this task and thinking about how I would present it to my students. So first off, different ways to have your students discuss space mining. I think a Socratic seminar would make sense. One thing that I'm really into lately is spiderweb discussions, which is kind of like a different take on Socratic seminars where the focus is collaboration and everyone contributing and sharing evenly. There's a lot of great protocols online. I would definitely check out Engage New York, but there's no need to recreate the wheel. There are a lot of great resources that are out there, so take some of those. And the best discussions in my mind are ones that are extremely structured. So teaching your students those structures and how to act during these certain types of discussions is best practice. Besides the Socratic seminar, I think a town hall meeting would also be another appropriate venue for this discussion. Having students just debate one-on-one, kind of like a speed dating debating activity. Or if you're like me, during the remote realm, some of my attendance is not as good as I would hope it would be. So you can also kind of plan this asynchronously and have students post their claims and respond to each other on some type of asynchronous platform like a Jamboard, a Google Classroom, assignment, or any other platform that you use. Okay, now that we have our debate set up, we can talk about a couple modifications that you can add in order to spice up your debate and make it more engaging for your students. So one best practice that I would have to share is to assign students a certain viewpoint, either to have equal representation or sometimes not to have equal representation. So first off, if you're pairing students up, it's always good to have equal amounts representing either the two or more viewpoints that you've presented to your students. One little modification that I always like to make is if I know that one of my students that like to share a little bit more, my outspoken students, or one that has really strong researching skills, I like to assign that student either like the less favorable viewpoint or the less popular viewpoint and make them kind of stick their feet in the sand and debate that claim that they might not necessarily be bought into against the other students in the class. So sometimes it's nice to take that higher performing student, challenge them by assigning them a viewpoint that they don't necessarily agree with. And if you really want to frustrate them, you can even have unequal representation where they're having to debate students that are coming at them with something that they might feel a little bit more strongly about, but that's going to challenge the student to find more research, and everyone kind of gets competitive. So I always like to kind of put those students on the spot and challenge them to find other things that students might not necessarily find on their own. Another thing is I like to get really creative when designing classroom discussions. So for these next two bullet points, I think creating kind of like the scene or the scenario and creating a world where students are going to be participating in is going to let them have a little bit more imagination and be a little bit more bought into the debate. So if you're having a town hall discussion, maybe you're going to name your town, you're going to name all of your classmates' townspeople, and they're going to be coming into town hall to discuss if local taxes should be funding a local space mining company. Or maybe participants in the debate are competing for a prize like government funding. So should government funding go to space mining or should it go to colonizing Mars? Which one would be a better allocation of funding? On top of just the scenario, I like to assign stakeholder positions. So rather the student looking at this from the scope of a high school student, maybe you're going to assign them the role of a entrepreneur or the CEO of a new company or a conservationist who's wary about us using raw materials from celestial objects in space. So anything that kind of removes the student from their perspective and puts them in the kind of scope of someone that would be really invested in this debate is going to have them try to create and craft a stronger debate to kind of win that competition. Feel free to customize the debate question. I always find that the juicier the question gets, the juicier the debate is. And also feel free to customize any of the resources that are available to your students in that Google Doc. Lastly, just some other best practices. I always think that adding a rubric sets really clear expectations. So I would design a rubric for kind of the evidence gathering section, that first graphic organizer of the benefits and the challenges. I would have another row, at least one, for the claim evidence reasoning response. So the student making the claim and providing evidence using the sources. And then another rubric row for guiding your debate. If you're doing this all in one lesson, you can have one rubric. If you're breaking this up into a number of days, you might want to have a separate rubric discussing or addressing the different parts of a debate. I would want to give instructions on students how to find reliable resources. So one that I show in the student-facing video for this lesson is Novel New York. So going on here, you would just follow a couple links. So click on this, search the Novel New York databases now. Clicking here, and if you scroll down a little bit to the academic, or as a general reference, school-oriented, you'll see these Gale in context databases. So we have one for elementary school, middle school, and this opposing viewpoints is high school. So some of the articles that I posted in the Google Doc, I found in this Gale in context. Once you open this Gale in context database, you'll be able to search. We can look for space mining, and it'll give you a number of different types of resources that include academic journals, videos, audio, newspapers, and magazines. So definitely teach your students where to find their resources, teach them how to find reliable resources. So I always say anything that ends in .org or .gov, anything from a publication. Less reliable would be things like blogs and resources that they haven't heard of or can't find any information on. If they do find a resource that has a paywall around it, like a lot of times the New York Times or the Washington Post will force a person to be a subscriber or give their email. A lot of times you can go into an incognito window. So just clicking here in Chrome and then opening incognito will kind of be a nice, easy workaround for those paywalls. So I'm sorry if any editors are watching this saying that I'm duping you of your subscription pay. I always think it's good to let students come to their own conclusions. So rather than starting the debate saying, here's why we need to learn how space mining is important, put it up to the students, just present them with the articles and have them make their claim and back it up with evidence. And then in the end, I always think it's a good practice to let students discuss the debate itself and come to their own conclusions after the fact, especially if they had one of those opposing viewpoints or one that they didn't agree with, or if they were a different stakeholder, being able to kind of come out of that scenario that you built for them and be a little bit more metacognitive over what it was like to collect their data, what it was like to present their findings to others, and different ways that people communicated to them that were either effective or ineffective during the lesson. And last but not least, when it comes to discussions, I would never expect the very first time I do it with a class to be great. Of course, practice makes perfect, and the more you can kind of build protocols and teach those understandings to students, the better it will get. So I hope this was informative. I hope you found something new here, and I hope you have a great debate with your students. Have a nice day. Bye.